And we're live. Welcome to the Constitutional Roundtable. My name is Andrew, the citizen 1776, and with me is Brady, the war hamster. I don't know why I keep introducing you and myself. I mean, everyone just knows who we are. Unfortunately, we don't have Doug here today, though. Doug had to take care of some personal stuff, and that's fantastic because now we could do the hamster wheel or whatever you want to call your new show.
uh, Hamster tails. No,
Do the
Doug was going to join us in the last minute. His wife decided that she needed some good marital time, and so he's going to take her out to dinner and be a good husband. So we will miss him.
yeah. I did a few weeks ago, so now it's his turn, I guess.
Yeah. See, I missed a show on Sunday night, being doing that
Oh
kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah. So every once in a while. Every once in a while, the other people who control our social calendars have to be deferred to.
Yeah. That's important. Don't forget family or the spouse. So, especially the spouse. I could care less about the family compared to the spouse.
The Yeah, I did. I took my girlfriend and her little 4-year-old to a Christmas train event yesterday, which should have been about a 90-minute drive for me, but it ended up being about 3 hours with all the holiday traffic. And then
Mm,
coming back home at 11 o'clock at night, of course, they were doing construction on 3 lanes of the freeway. So instead of a 45-minute commute, the last leg, it ended up being about an hour and a half. So I'm just so road weary. I went out to go do some shopping today, and just traffic everywhere. I'm just done with it. I'm gonna go on Saturday.
here's a question: how many electric cars versus gasoline cars were there, and were there any hydrogen cars there?
Are you talking about on the road?
Yes.
Yeah, the neighborhood I live in has an awful lot of um, Teslas. My sister's got one. I got sideswiped by a Tesla. Soccer mom driving a Tesla last year.
Hmm.
Just sort of didn't see me and tried to cut into my lane, and boom, did about $2,000 worth of damage. But no, I was nice about it, and she was
Were
a
you
nice lady.
shocked?
Well, I wasn't expecting to get hit. Yeah, my dog freaked out because he was sitting in the seat where she hit. But
Yeah.
yeah, we do have a lot of Teslas in this neighborhood.
Uh, well, we got 4 people, and how about y'all put some comments in there, and we'll get the show rolling. So I guess let's talk about some wild stuff.
You want to go straight into the deep end tonight, huh?
I guess might as well.
Okay.
Doug's gone, and the only thing I could think of talking about right now is biblical history. So I mean, we
Uh,
could talk about that. I'm more than happy to. Um,
I'm not. I'd end up being I'd end up doing a lot of listening. You know that stuff a lot better than I do. Um, yeah, the only other topic that I was really on all week was the Arizona trials, both Kerry Lake and Abe Hamada. And Abe presented today, and the judge ruled the same day that no, there's nothing going forward here. Abe's lawyers dropped the ball. They didn't. They didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare, but there was a very weak case brought, and it should have been a lot better given the filing. So a little disappointed with that. But Kerry Lake's arguments were really strong, and they had expert witnesses who held their own. The cross-examination from Hobbs' team probably did more harm than good. They just kept opening up avenues for these experts to keep proving Kerry's case. So the judge should rule sometime after Christmas if we don't have it now, maybe Monday, Tuesday.
hmm.
I don't know if they can order a redo or not. There's some debate on that. And I guess one of the remedies is they can just declare Kerry Lake the winner, which I don't think seems fair. So I don't know what's going to happen, but it's certainly going to appeals. But they definitely demonstrated that there's some huge chain of custody issues in Maricopa, and also that someone probably deliberately messed with the ballot printing printer settings. And those are the two things they had to prove, and I think they did.
Interesting. Interesting. Um,
Yeah, Tracy, Doug texted us maybe 5 minutes ago that his wife was going to take priority tonight. So sorry
yeah.
about that.
Yes. Merry Christmas Eve Eve. Thank you, Tracy. Well, we got
All right.
4 people in the chat.
Well,
Um,
take us down whatever road you want to go down. I'm along for the ride.
I'll share a little bit of biblical history, and then we can go from there. Or if you have any questions, but anyway, here's a new book that you could look into. I want to make sure I get the pronunciation of the book correctly. But this gentleman was able to actually, through reliable sources, one, the Bible, two, other historians, even like Josephus. Are you familiar with that historian?
I am not.
Well, that's one of them, and then a few others where he was able to deduce the day of creation to October 23rd, 4004.
Okay.
So, and obviously, I'm a Christian who's a creationalist, so I believe that the Bible is the true historical account of creation. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, and that's okay. You're completely fine being wrong. I completely accept that.
That includes me.
Well, I mean, it's if you really think about it. Here's why I encourage you to look up Ken Ham. Yes, Ken Ham, and he goes in depth about it, and it's actually very interesting. But yes, through observational science, through actual manuscripts that so the Bible has over tens of thousands of reliable manuscripts that actually back up the accounts in the Bible. Um, and That's very important because, for instance, Homer with the Iliad, I think he only had like 4 manuscripts, and they were over 200 years from the opposed time of when it was written and all that stuff. The Bible has like 24,000 manuscripts within a 35-year period from the actual originals, which is very key because in book time, that's like the day before yesterday. So that's very important. And there's a book from a gentleman named James Usher, Usser. I believe he was from the 1600s. He actually created a book that actually, he was the one that came up with October 23rd, the day of creation. And he actually has sources. So if you're like, well, how do you come up with that? There's sources in there. And it'll explain that in the book. And not everything is purely Bible, but if it's not Bible, it's historical manuscripts from historians and other things like that. So it's not like you just pulled it out of thin air. You know, I did not go through the full book. I went through some of it. Like here, I'll actually have a scan of one of the pages here. All right. On the first day of the world, Sunday, October 23rd, God created the highest heaven and the angels. When he finished, as it were, the roof of this building. That's just like a little snippet. So he actually goes into it, and then the second day will obviously be Monday, October 24th, which is funny for me because my birthday's on the 27th. So
Yeah.
but
Yeah, there's
yeah,
also you also get this, you get some people who look in the, well, I guess they call themselves true biblical historians, and they'll tell you that December 25th is not actually Jesus Christ's birth date, and they try to do that earlier in the fall as
correct.
well. Yeah, so I've heard that a
Yeah,
lot.
and actually, it's for the if you actually look through not just biblical record, but actual history, like go to Rome or wherever, anyone that has ties to the birth of Jesus, that you will actually find history there that uh, it was. I guess people are debating between 4 to 2 BC. In this book, it says 5 BC. Um, but yes, he was born, I believe, sometime. I want to say it was in April. He was actually born.
So where I have internal struggles with the case you're presenting about being Earth being 4,000 years old, would that make it 6,000 years old? I guess.
Oh no. The Earth is about
I'm sorry.
6.
So So whereas I'm a Christian, and I believe a lot of the important things I've got down. I've got no questions on that. When some of the details differ with what I believe to be scientific and archaeological fact, I've got the only way I can reconcile that is that the Bible was written for people who had a different understanding of science at the time, and some of it's perhaps it's there were analogies were used and stuff like that. That's that's the only way I can personally reconcile it internally, because the two, I can't, the science that I know, start talking about Göbekli Tepe, the 11,600-year-old structure, and the science behind that seems sound, and then you get all the flood stories that have to go back to 11,600 years ago, and and then we got dinosaur fossils, and you got all kinds of astrological things. We can measure that light. A beam of light's been traveling for so many years. Now that would be creation of the universe. It wouldn't be creation here, I know, but it's all these scientific facts that I can't. The two don't coincide to me, and I've been working through this for a couple of years now, and I don't have I don't have an answer.
Yeah, personally, I think you'll enjoy Ken Ham, and I could send you some links. They can explain it better than I could because they're actual. Like Ken Ham is an actual scientist, and he actually has other actual scientists. Like he has actual paleontologists that go over those things. He has actual archaeologists that go over those things. All this other stuff, and they can actually explain it better than I can because I'm just a good old boy from Tennessee. But I just know that. Let's look at carbon dating for a minute. Okay. Are you familiar with carbon dating?
Very much so.
Yeah. So you have two ways that you can look at something to understand where it's from. So let's say, for instance, when the Earth was created, right? You have a historical observation. So, like, let's say there was a guy that lived. Let's say for whatever reason Adam's still alive. He could tell us what happened on the day of creation, right? So that would be someone giving an actual account. Now that would be ideal because then we can go from there. Okay, so what year was it? Perfect. Now we have a year. Unfortunately, we don't have that. So we have other things to go off of as far as historical record and then tracing that back. And then we also have like observations of, like, for instance, like fossils and all these things. Like, okay, we know when this plant was around, whatever. And then also with science, now with carbon dating, we don't know how old this rock is because we weren't there whenever it was made, which is key into understanding how old something is because you could know the environment in which it was in. So here's an example. Let's say we have a rock. Don't know what kind of rock. Let's just say it's a rock. Secular scientists will say, okay, that's 4,000. That's 4 billion years old because that's how long it takes for this particular rock because of carbon dating, because of the amount of radiation decay in this rock. Well, how do you know that rock did not have an accelerated decay because of a certain event? Because let's say it fell on this thing and something else fell on top of that, which created extra pressure and all this other stuff. So therefore it could be off. Does that make sense? So instead of going off of speculation, like for instance, the creationist scientists will go, okay, they're going to go off the observables. Okay, what do I have right now? I have a fish. I'm not going to make a speculation on what kind of fish, what it looked like. All I have is the bones and the things around it, right? And the secular scientists and the creational scientists will have the same evidence, but they both come to different conclusions because of different starting points, as it were. And that's it. And I'll tell you this: don't feel bad that you have a struggle with this because there's a lot of people that do. It's something that that not every man can necessarily have the technology or the ways of being able to approach this, but that's where we also have to do our own experiments if we want to, or have good reliable people that have the research and explain, okay, here's what I came up with and here's how I came up with it, right?
So I've got I think I've told you this before. Our pastor is really strong on the subject, and he would agree with you. He'd be on your team on this in this discussion. He was also a college basketball player. So, and I've been wanting to chat with him. So we've made plans for in January. We're going to get together a couple times, just go shoot hoops and talk about this stuff. It'd be boring to just go sit down to lunch. Let's go shoot some baskets and do this. But
shooting baskets, would that be out of place or would that be consistent?
No, I'm a basketball player. I used to play 365 days a year until just a few years ago. I love the game. I'm an old school gym rat. So I played in the league until about 6 years ago. I think I stopped playing. The best argument the one no one's ever been able to refute to me, and I got this one from Randall Carlson, who was on the Joe Rogan show. He does a lot of work with Graham Hancock, the guy who wrote Chariots of the Gods, and they talk about the Sphinx, which supposedly was built, according to the archaeologists, 6,000 BC, about the same age as the Great Pyramid, the first of them. Well, the problem with that is the quarry that the Sphinx was taken from is only a couple miles away. It's got a bunch of vertical pockmarks in the rock, and that cannot be produced unless you have torrential rainstorms.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go look at the soil samples, which are very reliable because the soil, every layer of the soil marks 1 year. That's pretty hard science. The last time they had rainfall heavy enough in that part of Egypt was, once again, 11,600 years ago, the time of the flood, which makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, if I assume that to be true, I can only draw the conclusion that the Bible is not historically, Old Testament is not as perfectly accurate as you would represent. And we could spend a whole show talking about this, but I'm a long ways of being able to defend my arguments. So,
here's a question: would you be open to this? And if you don't want to do this, that's fine. I could just send you the video. If I send you this video, can you screen share it and then we can react to it? So basically, we play a little bit, we pause it, we talk about it, and then that'll kind of be the show. You want to do that?
Let's do that another time.
Okay.
I'd like to do some homework, before I go into a topic, and I've got some stuff queued up because it is a topic that I'm interested in. So let's put this one on the calendar for another date so I can actually be prepared with some good discussion points.
Not a problem.
Hey, let's see before we jump into your questions. Hey, audience, we got 5 people. Hey, pretty good for Christmas Eve. Any topics you guys want us to go over? Something that we normally wouldn't with Doug here. Call us and ask me anything.
You guys come up. You better put a caveat with that.
well, anything that won't get us banned from YouTube, which we crossed over a few times already. But
yeah. Tracy, you said something about Ron swears September 11th. What does that mean?
It means the birth of Christ, the actual date. Yeah.
Well,
he backs it up with it. He's got his argument and he's got his facts. Ron does his homework on this stuff. I can't argue with him, but he says that's a true astrological date, and he's got his version of proof for it.
Well, that's the thing. The proof. I guess I'd have to see the sources, but as long as he didn't say December 25th, I guess we're fine.
All right. Well, let's jump into. You can ask me anything. Which direction you want to go?
All right. Let's open up this Pandora's box. You should be careful with what you ask for. Remember, I'm good at asking questions.
You are. You're getting better by the week, too.
All right. So let's see here.
We can go CIA. We can go FBI. We can go OSS, MI6, Mossad. We can go Constitution. The actual cause of the Civil War I've been reading up on again. Why Lincoln
How about we talk about that a little bit? Go ahead. Since you just started reading up on that again, go ahead.
Well, the commonly held myth, of course, is that it was a war about slavery, which is absolutely not true. And we'll caveat this by saying, and that's probably the best thing that came out of the Civil War, was the end of slavery in an expedited fashion. But if you really think, if people think it's about slavery, you need to understand some historical facts. First of all, Lincoln was a racist. He was a racist his entire life. He's got, in his political career, he's got all kinds of writings in the 1850s that talk about all kinds of things that would get you excommunicated from society if you said them today. He was a railroad lawyer. The railroads were some of the worst of the robber barons, and all they wanted was to be able to use the government money to give them perks to build their railroads, basically using taxpayer money for their commercial benefit. This is crony capitalism. Well, Lincoln was one of their lawyers, and one of his main jobs in the 1840s and 50s was to kick people out of their houses so the railroad could go through. So he sued people out of their houses, used manifest destiny and all that stuff. Calling it the Civil War is a mistake, because it was not a civil war. It was a war of northern invasion, or more correctly, the war of southern independence. The South, we were a voluntary union. The South decided. The North had been trying to put tariffs on the South for almost 30 years, and the South had been successfully stopping it through nullification. I'm just trying to read the chat real quick. There's a bunch of them going through. Very good. Yeah, it's a fun conversation. A lot of there's some Lincoln Republicans. Oh, they go ballistic when you start talking about this stuff. But it's just historically right. Brian McClanahan does a great job in this stuff. Who's the other guy? We talk about a lot. I'll think of his name in a second. Thomas. God, I can't believe I lost lesson. Anyways, in 1860, nullification had been working for 30 years. The North, because they had a population advantage, were trying to impose tariffs on the South. The South wanted to be able to ship their goods directly to Europe, where they were making more money. The North didn't like that. In 1860, 75% of U.S. GDP was produced by the South. The South were the wealthy ones. The Northern industrialists and bankers were not. This is what they were trying to change. Di Lorenzo, thank you, Stephanie. Jeez, I can't believe it's like one of my heroes, my favorite authors, and I can't remember his last name because I'm on camera. I get stupid. Anyways, long story short, the Civil War was started because apparently they fired on Fort Sumter. But I would make the argument that the South legally seceded, and the North put a military fort in their territory. That would be an invasion by definition. So the North was the aggressors. The war could have gone either way. It was immigration from Europe that really saved the day for the North. They just basically people come right off the ships and they'd hand them citizenship and a musket and send them out to the lines. And eventually they wore down the South. But the real cause of the war, it's always been economic. It's always been about power. And these same people, the what I call them the Lincoln Republicans, these are the establishment, Puritan, Northeast establishment people that 100 years later would go on to form, formed Wall Street way before, but they ended up forming the CIA and the OSS. These are the same families. These are the people that Brian McClanahan would call the Yankees. And we call our current establishment Republicans rhinos. No, they're the exact same people the Republican Party was started. The Republican Party, they say the Republican Party was started to end slavery. Well, not so much, because you got to remember there was slavery in the North. Most of the northern states were still slave states. So that's a fun one. I mean, ask me some questions on this stuff. There's a lot of info about the Civil War that's misunderstood, and Lincoln.
Let's touch on the FBI dark side. Chris mentioned that.
Oh yeah. Well, let's start with the fact that the FBI never took on organized crime, the mafia or the Jewish mafia. Never. There were very few takedowns, and there's a reason for that. The way that part of the world operates is everyone's got blackmail on everyone else, and a lot of them are closet homosexuals, including J. Edgar Hoover. There's a number of mobsters that basically have testified they regularly went to parties where J. Edgar Hoover would show up in drag wearing his dress. There were orgies, etc. This was, this is what the FBI was always all about. It was about political power and blackmail. These guys and Hoover had files and had blackmail on everyone at these parties too. They all had dirt on each other. So if you look at the origins of the FBI, and JFK was going to break them up along with the CIA in 1963. That's where's JFK is no longer with us. So, the other real interesting thing about the dark side of the CIA is Scottish rites. Are you familiar? Andrew, are you familiar with Scottish rites?
No.
Scottish rites is a sect of Freemasonry. When we talk Freemasonry, it's important to remember all Masons are not the same. There are good Freemasons. There are other sects that are not so good. There have been infiltration. So when you start talking about Freemasons, you have to keep an open mind. But the Scottish rites guys are basically the ones who formed the FBI and some other previous. The Scottish rite stuff goes back into the 1800s.
Is this documented, or is this
100% documented?
Okay.
Yeah. I won't state anything that's just theoretical.
I know. I just figured I'd say that for the sake of the people watching. So.
Nah, it's not necessarily Scotland. It's Scottish Rites was it's dates back to oh goodness, if you really want to know, some of this stuff goes way back to non-Christian denomination stuff. The heretical, I forget the word I'm looking for. Some of this stuff could be considered satanic. A lot of it's definitely not monotheistic. But Scottish Rites, it's interesting. They had a different view of the world, and some of them actually thought they were doing good. But that section of Freemasons, that is at the lot of the FBI were Scottish Rites Freemasons. A lot of their upper brass has always been, and they thought they had a different mission. Their goal was to be, a different class of superhuman to guide human destiny. It's just another group like that. So when you look at any organization, you got to look at its foundation, its origins, and the people involved and what they really believe. How's that for a dark side of the FBI?
That's pretty good. All right, let me see what else I got here.
I've got more on the CIA than I do the FBI.
Well, I want to hold on the CIA for a minute.
Oh, and by the way, they are competing agencies quite often.
You said they aren't or are?
They were quite often.
Interesting.
Today, not as much. It seems like the entire machine is united for one cause, which sure looks like the Great Reset or something along those lines. It's technocracy is what's really at work here.
No. Let's see here. Did you find anything else out about? Because I remember you said a while back that you were going to look into some of the research that I've been doing on the Atomic Energy Commission and the Area 51, all that stuff. Did you happen to look at any of that?
I've had a few things pop up in the stuff that I've been reading about that's related.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of it goes back to, you've heard me tell the story about how the business plot in 1933, where all these Wall Street bankers and their oligarchical families, the other multinational corporations, banded together to try to overthrow FDR, and they ended up taking over, the OSS and the CIA. Well, basically, these same people pretty much started running the government after World War II, and there's some pretty good indicators that if you start looking at some tertiary indicators like when did fertility rates start dropping, and when did some of these anti-Christian social things start changing in America, and it all started in 1945, post World War II. That was when the decay of our country started, and these would have been the same people that were at the roots of the Area 51 stuff in 1947. So yeah, a lot of it's tied together. When you start figuring out this web of power brokers around the world, all these international offshore banks and the drug trafficking, the narcotics and the human trafficking, and you had legitimate businesses like quote unquote the Rockefellers, never did anything criminal, but they were all interconnected and they had the same banking interests with the crooks around the world. Everyone from Adnan Khashoggi, you name it, these people all knew each other. Then you say, okay, if these people had this much power, and would they allow someone else to be in charge of the military and the secrets? And the answer is, of course not. It's always been men in smoky rooms calling the shots.
Yeah. And that's basically what you found in some of your readings lately?
Yeah, you gotta. That's one of those follow the money type things. How do you get funding for secret government projects? Who
well, my question is why? So obviously, there's a lot of black sites, and when I say black sites, for those, I'm not talking about like websites. It's the dark web. That's not what I'm talking about. Although I think the dark web was created by the CIA. I'm pretty sure. At least I heard that. But anyway, oh, you know what? It was on that website that you shared with me. That all the trafficking, all the human trafficking and all that stuff and whatever went through. That's why the dark web was created, was for all that. And I think the FBI and the CIA or something like that were behind it. But anyway, that's not my point for saying that.
I would define a dark site is, whether it be the CIA, the U.S. military intelligence, what have you, they've got basically off the books properties where they do stuff that they want to keep off the books.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but my question is why Area 51? Like, why is it the way it is today? That's what I'm kind of curious about. Do you think while we're talking about this, maybe do you think you could do like a quick search on it?
Oh, not on this computer. My archives are right next to me, so we'd have to be set up. When I get my new workstation set up, I'll be able to do that better. Have both
Okay.
laptops going at the same time. But when you say how Area 51 is today, how do you perceive it to be today?
Well, today it just seems. I mean, it seems like it's all surrounded by mysterious aircraft. And again, I think that that's kind of a psyop. Obviously, I don't believe aliens are real. There's no evidence that aliens are real other than some stuff that could easily be CGI'd. I mean, and then eyewitness accounts. Look at the mark I have. I don't buy it, right? Because you could easily make that. I mean, does that make sense? So, I mean, taking the alien equation out of it, there's got to be a reason why that place is blacker than night.
I had this conversation with a lady hamster yesterday. We were stuck in traffic, and
for 3 hours.
She was only with me for an hour of it. 2 hours of just getting to her. It was ridiculous.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it's usually a 45-minute drive, so put that into perspective how bad the traffic is. That's also probably why I'm not smiling as much tonight. I'm still really in a bad mood from all that time bumper to bumper.
Yeah, let me say this real quick. Hold on, Brady. But Tracy, as far as the nuclear test, that was actually done in the Nevada test range, which I believe Area 51 is located just outside of where a lot of the nuclear stuff went. So it's not quite connected, but it's in the general area, but it's not quite connected.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's a number of government sites in that area.
Yeah, all different kinds of stuff between nuclear tests, chemical warfare, you name it. Anyway, go ahead with what you're saying. You're on the road.
Oh God, no goodness! I was trying to go back to Area 51.
Yes.
Oh well, so we're talking about shoot, I lost my train of thought. I'll get it back in a second here. She asked me, you look at George Soros, he's 80 something years old. It looks like he's been dead for 3 years. And, how's he still alive? And, my answer is I go, look, there's some legitimate speculation that the powers that be have scientific discoveries that are well in advance of what's available to the rest of us. And I'm not necessarily suggesting they're drinking baby's blood or anything like that. Although who knows, anything could be true when it comes to these people.
Mm-hmm.
What I would suggest is perhaps they've made advances in medical science that they are not sharing with the rest of us. And if you look at this travesty of a $1.7 trillion bill that just got passed, we had like 80 plus year old octogenarians. You get Pelosi and Biden and Schumer. I mean, I'm not just Schumer, McConnell. All these people are over 80 years old. Most people retire at 80 or they're done, but these people are running the world. And how much sense does that make? And so perhaps they've got, and that brings up Nikola Tesla. And Lady Hamster wasn't too familiar with Nikola Tesla. She thought that he might have something to do with Elon Musk's car, but no, that was named after him. Might have been the most brilliant man of the century, perhaps. Just an absolute super genius, but well above and beyond Einstein. I think Einstein is slightly overrated, but that's a different story for another day.
Yeah.
And Nikola Tesla, some of the things he was doing with energy, and and then you fast forward to what was it, 2 weeks ago? They had this huge announcement in what's the term for the energy we're just talking about?
Free energy.
Yeah, the fusion.
Or are we
fusion energy. And Tesla had theorized all this stuff, many years ago. And if you want to go tinfoil hat on this, one of the favorite conspiracy theories, is about Donald Trump's uncle having some connection to Nikola Tesla and fusion energy. And that got me digging into that stuff a few years back. But there is something to this stuff. So Area 51, these UFOs or whatever, where they are unidentified flying objects because we can't identify them. Is that the U.S.? Do we have secret capabilities that our military doesn't know about? That's one of the better explanations. I don't know the answer. We've talked about these videos of different people who've quote unquote worked on Area 51 and seen the ships. Look, if I can't see it with my own eyes, I don't. It's, at this point in time, I don't trust anything I see on video.
Well, here's a question, I guess. What do you think about the? I mean, I have my mind made up. But what do you think of the validity of like Bob Lazar? I
Yeah,
mean, I believe.
that's
I
exactly
believe.
who I was. That's exactly who I was referring to.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, do I think he's lying? No. Do I believe that aliens exist? No, of course not. So there's some speculation that maybe he was brainwashed of some kind or something like that, or maybe he was fed a lie and he believed it. Like I don't know where I sit with that. Obviously, I know.
Well, real quick for the audience who don't know who Bob Lazar is, this is a really smart guy. He's an RSG. I call him really smart guys. He's a brainiac, and he comes across as very credible. You can look him up, Bob Lazar, Lazar, on YouTube, and he's very shy. He doesn't do many interviews, but he's done a few. And he came on Rogan and gave some very compelling testimony about it. What he saw when he was working at Area 51, and we're talking about real life flying saucers that he worked on and technology that he'd never seen before. And this guy's a rocket scientist, or some kind of really high level scientist. He comes across as credible.
Yeah, he seems very genuine. Like it doesn't he doesn't come across to me as he's lying. But Joe Rogan kind of put it on. I mean, Joe Rogan, he's like a full, like, he wants to believe so bad that aliens are real. Where I think he's maybe a little bit biased, but also he said, like, I don't know if he's telling the truth or not. Something's odd about it, because I mean, either he's, his stories stayed consistent the whole time. I personally believe, or not believe, but lean towards it's craft that we were able to make. Like, we have the understanding of making these things, but with compartmentalization, all they have to do is tell him, oh, these were made by, these aliens, and he'd believe it. But we've been able to make it, if these things are real, as far as like the crafts,
So
because there's the speculation of the TR, was it the TR3B, that uses plasma as a way of anti-gravity propulsion.
So which you're hitting on a really important topic that's going to take us in another direction, and I'd like to go there. So follow me if you'd like, and
Sure.
I'll lead into it. So the theory really here is, do we have alternative energy sources? Do we have unlimited free energy? And if we did, it would change the world in immeasurable ways. It would lift everybody out of poverty. I mean, the whole world. There would be no reason for poverty ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like one of the major theories I talk about with what are the elites of what is the Great Reset all about? What do these technocrats want? And ties into depopulation theory. It's always been a battle for resources. Those who have want to make sure they keep it and get more. And those of us who do not, they don't like, and they want us to be their serfs and their slaves. That's human. That is human history in a nutshell. But if you've got access to unlimited energy, Nikola Tesla style or Area 51 style, something that could propel a ship like that, using some kind of magnetic energy is what I think what Lazar was talking about, or anti-gravity, anti-magnetic, all that.
Yeah, it was based off of element 115, which is supposed to be a very heavy element that's not found anywhere near the Earth or anything like that. And scientists were able to confirm that it exists, but they can't come up with a stable isotope that will last long enough.
So the technocrats in the 1930s, they were eugenicists, like most of the other major movements back then. Their philosophy was that we're scientists, we're experts, we're smarter than everyone else. With our bureaucrat friends, we're going to measure every single person's energy consumption and calculate who should be able to use energy and who shouldn't. They were going to give us energy rations. And yeah, that this ties into eugenics and all that stuff. Well, that movement got decimated in World War II because the Nazis took a lot of their ideologies to the nth degree, and it got exposed for the whole world to see and left a very bad taste in the mouth of the masses. Well,
Yeah.
the technocrats never went away. I mean, these ideas didn't die, but it was very prevalent. I mean, Columbia University had a whole department. Um, this is a big movement. I think I've told the story on your show that Elon Musk's grandfather was the president of the Canadian Technocratic Party. Well,
Hmm.
if you start understanding who the technocrats are and what they wanted, and it still goes down to it's a monopoly of resources. Ties into this Rockefeller story I keep telling you about. What's the major resource for energy right now? It's oil. And who's got the monopoly on that? The Rockefellers and about 3 European families. There's other players, but at the end of the day, they've got a huge, huge monopoly in it. Why did nuclear energy, which is basically free and pretty darn safe, why did it just disappear from the Western world? Because unlimited energy allows everybody else to rise up. So if you're right, if your speculation is correct, that we actually did have access to unlimited energy as far back as the 40s. Well, these dirty bastards have been making a lot of people suffer for a long time because free universal energy changes everything. And
Yeah.
I would argue you probably want a less populous planet, but let that happen naturally, because that would occur naturally, because we won't have to work as hard. Manual labor would be, you would not need as much manual labor.
Yeah. Well, here's another type of fuel that even Bob Lazar has mentioned is hydrogen cars, which to explain to people, I'm not going to go into detail, but I work on German cars for a living, and the craze is EV cars, and they are so dangerous. I don't even know how to express how dangerous they are. So if you can avoid an electric car, I would. Now, gasoline cars are dangerous as well. I mean, hydrogen cars, gasoline cars, EV cars are dangerous, but the the risk does not outweighs the reward when it comes to EV. Fuel, if the car lights up, hey, firefighters know how to put it out. It's fairly fuel efficient for what it is. It's reliable. Hydrogen cars, they actually have. There's a company in Australia that has one that could go 900 miles on one tank, and it doesn't take much to fuel it up. I mean, I think hydrogen is a much better option. The thing is that the government and everybody else can't get rich off it.
That's because that goes back to the monopoly,
Exactly.
monopoly on resources. If you have control of the resources that everyone else needs, that's an awful lot of power. That allows you to control governments, start wars,
Now
change cultures.
let me explain. Now let me say this: hydrogen has its own risks, but it seems that the risk is worth the reward in the sense of the fuel efficiency, how safe it is, so it's gas and hydrogen, they're good options. Electric, it would be good for a house. That would be a good option for a house, but for a car, no. And here's something else. If that lithium battery lights up, I could be wrong in this, so someone can please do the double check me on this. But I believe a firefighter said that a EV car fire reaches temperatures, I think, of about 20,000 degrees. Let me say that again:
Seems
20,000 degrees.
that's a pretty big number.
And if you were to fully submerge it underwater, it would take about 30 days to put it out. So they had to make a special extinguisher to attempt to put the fire out on the road. So just let that sink in. 20,000 degrees versus maybe, let's say on a exaggerated level, 5,000 degree gasoline fire, right? But the gasoline
The
fire,
gasoline fire burns itself out almost within minutes because it runs out of fuel.
right? And it's relatively easy to put it out as far as for firefighters because they do it all the time. They have experience with it. And eventually, I'm sure they'll find better ways to put out EV fire. But I mean, like I said, the risks don't outweigh the reward. But like you said, follow the money. Why are they pushing EV so hard? Because they can make money off it. Um, I mean, we have to get the batteries for those from China. So there's another connection there. With the loyalty that our government has with China. I mean, it's
Well, yeah,
it's not.
it's all these rare earth minerals, which apparently are mostly found in the third world hellholes, just like a lot of the precious resources, which our CIA and military decided to keep making sure they would stay third world, so that our multinational corporations could exploit them. Same story over and over again. This is Banana Republic stuff. The story I ran into suggests that if we go to this next phase of transhumanist, what have you, future that they want, the most important resource on the planet is going to be cobalt. Have you heard this one?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, cobalt apparently is a necessary. I don't even know it's called a rare earth metal, but if you look at where the cobalt mines are in the world, you're looking at the hellholes of Africa and other places where basically third world,
That
100%.
explains why China's going there. Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of reasons China's going there. My thoughts on why obviously the push for electric cars has a lot more to do with the combustion engine allowed the average citizen incredible amounts of freedom of movement, and the tyrants do not want that. If you're on an electric car or even a computerized car, they can cut off your movement anytime they want. When I buy my next car, I'm gonna try to find some really smart guy and say, hey, can you disable all the electronics? I don't want GPS. I'll do that through my phone. I don't want anybody to be able to hack into my car. I
Well,
think
you could. Well, you can, and I'm speaking from a technician point of view. You could have the. I'm pretty sure you could have them delete it, or just like for GPS, you don't even have to have it put in the car. Yes, it will have the receiver still in there, but there is a. So whenever, all right. So I'm gonna explain this a little bit. All right. So when a car is put together, you have your wires where you can have analog and digital signals that go between modules, things like that. And then with those modules, they're all programmed into the car. Now, it's code that's very long, but it's stored into the gateway, which the gateway, like, let's say for an example, an Audi, the gateway is going to be your 5F module, aka let's call it your radio. It's all intertwined in that. Now, there is actually a way. I don't know if dealers, like, I don't remember the process, but there is a way where you can delete that from the car. Not just remove it, because if you remove it, it'll throw faults and it could affect other things, but to actually delete it to where the car does not see it anymore. So, like for instance, whenever you buy a new car, the dealership will do a PDI, which is a pre-delivery inspection. Now, what happens during that is like for instance, with the manufacturer that I work with, you take it out of transport mode, which means that it's in a limited state for transport, and then once you take it out of that mode, then the car can start communicating. You start doing other things like that, and then you basically run through some software, and the car has let's call it PR codes, codes that are already linked to different modules and things are in the car, and you can actually like it basically sets up the car with what you have. So there is ways to actually physically and electronically delete those. Now that would be the best way to do that. I don't know how else to explain that. So if that was confusing, I apologize.
No, it
But
makes sense. It's analog versus digital at the beginning that really makes sense. We want to go on. If you don't want to be hacked in, you want to be analog. And
well,
yeah, I just want to be able to take out the brain, as I think Stephanie said in the chat. I don't, I don't need all that stuff in my car. It problem is I drive a German vehicle and apparently start messing with that computer. Everything goes wrong.
well, the Germans have a great way of making things. My suggestion is don't do anything to that car as far as modification. you're just going to create a nightmare for yourself, and then eventually it'll get you stranded on the side of the road. What I would do then is, if you don't want that, I would literally get a Hilux.
I have no idea what that is.
So special forces, special operations dudes, they are very familiar with this. So a Hilux is essentially a bare bones Toyota Tacoma. It's a favorite amongst the people in the Middle East because anyone could work on it. It's very simple, and you don't have all those crazy electronics that could go wrong. I mean, obviously you have some electronics, but it's bare bones.
Would a Forerunner have some similar characteristics? Because
If you buy an old one,
yeah.
this has to be an older one, not like the brand new one. Unfortunately, base model car these days is no longer base model. So a base model car today is the equivalent of a high end from 10 years ago. So as technology increases, the amount of free or base model things increases. So eventually, what you'd find in a fully loaded Tacoma today will be base, bare bones in the future. So it's all kind of relative in perspective. So
Yeah, I don't use any of the computer stuff in my car. I mean, I got a phone and a tablet for that stuff. Hey, check out Chris's comment in the chat.
to extinguish a lithium polymer battery, it needs to be completely submerged in water, preferably salt water. We use them in radio controlled planes, and if they get damaged, we put them in water. Interesting.
I've heard
Is that
something
before or after the fire?
I've heard something along those lines previously, so that checks out with something I think I read a while back.
Yeah, but also, all right, let me explain EV cars, because yes, I'm sure with smaller lithium batteries. So the way how a car lithium battery, again, different manufacturers can have different processes, but typically you'll have like a bank of 3 batteries, and then they'll be bridged to another bank of 3 batteries, and then bridged to another bank of 3 batteries, and they're all interconnected, and you'll have something like 400 volts, right? Or 500, or whatever your specific car has. And when those go wrong, you basically amplify. So I'm sure salt water can extinguish those fires, but you're basically quadrupling to the 10th power that battery with like an EV car. So that's why it's so much worse, is because you have so much more of it. So is my guess.
Well, long story short is, this, when it comes to your vehicle, most of us are still running on gas cars. Make sure your tank is always at least half full. If the S hits the fan ever, if the government ever does were to actually declare war against we the people, they got all kinds of ways of stalling your cars, and heck, being in suburbia sort of still. I think the idea of owning a dirt bike makes a ton of sense, because you're not the freeways are going to be shut down immediately. You look at the one thing Hollywood does occasionally is they'll depict future catastrophes really well. And if you look at what happened on the day The Walking Dead happened, and how all the freeways got shut down, that is very realistic of what happens in an apocalyptic event. So I don't know why I went there, but my I've been thinking an awful lot about what the government's doing to us lately, what their plans actually are. Yeah, $1.7 trillion spending bill. Something like 70 million went to, I forget the number. Basically, fighting against Second Amendment rights. They gave more money to the Bureau of 14% raise to the ATF. They are going to come for the guns. They're going to keep trying. It's not going to work. That the thing that gets me is in that $1.7 trillion omnibus bill that they just rammed through on Wednesday in the Senate and today or yesterday in the House. 18 Republican senators voted for it. So the Republicans are not your friends. And Tom Cotton, by the way, Tom Cotton was one of them. And a lot of people like Tom Cotton because he says some good things. But, this guy's a World Economic Forum guy. He's got a few other connections. I'll think of them. But no, he voted, he basically voted with the Dems. But more importantly, even of the Republican senators, the good ones, even like Rand Paul, every single one of them had the ability to go there on the floor and say, okay, read the bill. Every page of it, 4,155 pages, read the bill. If they'd done that on Wednesday, they'd be reading until through Christmas. They'd be on recess. The Republican House would have taken over in January and they would have stopped the bill. But not one Republican senator forced them to read that bill on the floor. So we have no friends in D.C. You know, it could have been stopped. Where it gets interesting is apparently the House of Representatives didn't have a quorum. They didn't have 50% of them. That stupid House rule that we're getting rid of, that you can let someone vote your proxy.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to apparently that's one of the things McCarthy's promised to do away with.
Yeah, I don't know how that got allowed in the first place. That just doesn't seem.
COVID. It's a COVID emergency measure. Nancy passed.
Well, old skin and bones there.
Well, she has given her final speech as Speaker of the House. Thank God. So people bitch and moan about, Republicans they lost the midterms. Well, no, they didn't. They won the generic House ballot by 4%. They retired Nancy Pelosi, took the gavel away from her. I mean, these are good things. So, they lost a seat in the Senate, but that was because it was targeted seats. But getting rid of Nancy's that's a major victory. I mean, that's what I'll be celebrating for New Year's. That'll be the best thing that happened in 2023, probably. But long story short is okay. So look at this. If they pass a House omnibus, if they pass that House the omnibus spending bill without a quorum, it is not legally passed. Will anybody stand up to challenge that? And how do you do that? I don't know the answer. That's what I was going to ask Doug tonight. I go, what do we do about that? Because it can't even go to Biden's desk if you didn't have a quorum. You can't even bring up a vote without a quorum present, even under Nancy Pelosi's rules.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Honestly, here's what I'm honestly surprised about. That they literally, and I know this may sound crazy, may not, I don't know. But I'm honestly surprised that they literally have not walked in front of a television screen, took the Constitution and literally did this, and then just declare martial law. I mean, it's like they've done everything else but that.
Well, the problem with the federal government declaring martial law is who's going to enforce it. And yeah, we think that the FBI is a bunch of Gestapo, but that's not the enforcement arm. You're talking about National Guard and U.S. military. And are they going to go, full spatsy on the American citizens? These are their own friends and family.
Well, I would say yes. I would say that there's a higher chance because COVID washed out a lot of true American soldiers, and what you have left is the woke, like the woke, transgender, bisexual, quasi crazy. I don't say quasi. But
perhaps there's some of that. We also have a younger generation that is much more apt to follow orders without question because of what the schools have done to them. But I live in San Diego. It is the biggest military town in the country. A lot of my friends are either military or ex-military.
How close is that to Coronado?
We were at the Coronado boat parade last Sunday night. Yeah. So Coronado is in San Diego, just right across. You go downtown San Diego, right across the Coronado Bridge, and you're right there. So we were on my buddy's catamaran watching the boat parade last Sunday.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, that's the West Coast Navy SEAL area. So you have your odd number teams, Team 1, Team 3, Team 5, things like that. And then on the East Coast, it's 2, 4, and then 6.
Where do they train on the East Coast?
Virginia Beach.
So I've got a, as a technical scuba diver, I know plenty of SEALs, and I used to share an office with a guy who just recently retired SEAL. In fact, they actually called me. He was going to do some consulting, and they called me. They interviewed me, the DOD, for his background check. So that was kind of interesting. But my point is, I know a lot of military and ex-military, and we do have conversations offline about what we're talking about. Would the military turn on the people?
Yeah.
And let me just say that I've got less confidence that they would obey that order absent. And this is why I think the government's been trying so hard to push the narrative of the insurrection and the violent white supremacists. I think this is why we've got we've got whistleblowers. The FBI field people say, wait a minute, why are you trying to turn this into a racial issue? This is not a domestic terrorist white supremacist issue. That's not what this is. And they're trying to categorize they're trying to paint a narrative so they can sell it. And the newspaper, and obviously the media will help them sell it. So, which brings up another fun factoid I just learned this week. I'd be fun to share. So we all know the media propaganda. They've lied us into every war, for 100 plus years. Turns out that in 1915, J.P. Morgan, a globalist banker, Rothschild stooge perhaps, or just an oligarch in his own right, and a bunch of shipbuilders and steel magnates in 1915 had a meeting, and they decided they're going to buy out 25 of the nation's biggest newspapers for the sole purpose of using propaganda to get the American public to back Americans' entry into World War I. This is available in congressional testimony in 1917. This happened, another documented fact. So we have one of the richest Wall Street bankers and a bunch of war profiteers using propaganda to send our brothers and sisters, back then brothers, off to war so they can make money. And this is what, why I say all wars are banker wars. There you have it. And World War I was stupid. We had no reason to be in it.
Yeah, I think we entered in like 17 or 18 or something like that. It was near the tail end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually a pretty cool YouTube channel. It's called The Great War, and there's a gentleman on there, and he does he actually takes you week by week, like no joke, it'll take him 4 years to get through, like however many years there was in the war. It'll take him that long because he literally goes week by week, once a week. So he'll do week 1, let's say this week, and then literally in present world, the next week he'll do the second week of World War I. So it literally took him 4 years to get through World War I, or technically it was 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay. 4 to 5 years. And then he did World War II right after that, week by week. So that's, if you want to get some good history. I did not verify everything, but we have a pretty good understanding of that history. And so it's pretty interesting, and he goes through it, and there's a lot of fun factoids, and then he does some interviews with people about like the tanks and stuff from the period and all that stuff. It's kind of cool about that.
Well, did we conclude whether the why would they declare martial law on us or not?
No,
I don't think it's going to happen, or I think they want it to happen, but we're not there yet. Perhaps they'll use another pandemic. That was one of. I mean, you saw what China was doing the last few months with 100% lockdowns, and even the Chinese people stood up against it and made the CCP back down, which is a major victory.
It's because they didn't want people to see them run over people with tanks again.
Well, they actually probably celebrate that in CCP because that kept the Chinese people pacified for 30 years.
Well, no one's allowed to talk about it, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a surveillance state. The people that run our country, they salivate over it. But I am not buying the argument that China, they talk about. This will be controversial, but it's worth doing. Everyone talks about the BRICS nations, and they're and I've talked about this. How we're getting away from the monopolar world and going into a multipolar world. Don't pretend for a second that China's the good guys, or that Russia's the good guys. We understand that Putin's on the right side of the Ukraine war for many reasons, but don't ever for a second think that they're not running a technocratic operation in those countries as well. It's just a matter of who gets there first. These are governments that are not on the side of freedom. So that's a mistake a lot of people are making, is thinking, oh, we should root for Russia. Well, to some degree, just because it stops our globalists, who in the Great Reset. So yeah, I'll give you that. But the enemy of my enemy is not necessarily my friend, and the CCP are not good guys at all. Of course, neither is Taiwan. Everyone. If everyone knew the history of Chiang Kai-shek and the People's Republic of China, these people were with the Chinese quote unquote Green Gang, which would be their version of the mafia. They were the biggest opium traders in the world, and they were working directly with our military intelligence all the way throughout the 30s and 40s to stimulate the global narcotics trafficking. We were propping them up with narcotics money. So there are not a whole lot of good players on the world stage. This needs to be solved by we the people and decentralization. It's concentrated power that's the problem.
Yeah, decentralization is key.
Yeah, and that ties into the currency. Everyone goes, "What's the proper currency solution?" Because
Barter.
No, God no, barter's a disaster.
Yeah, but the government can't control how many. Let's say I trade Jim Bob 3 bullets for a chicken egg. I mean,
that happens today. That already happens today. We do that all the time.
Yeah, but I know. But if we send a message across where literally everybody stops spending money, imagine just doing that for. All right, your perfect question for you. Here we go. All right, what if everyone in the United States that's not a crony stopped buying things and spending their money for a week to a month? What would happen?
If we all went to just buying from local farms and stuff like that?
No, just literally just stop spending money.
Economic disaster. Could we do it's called a boycott, and it's been theorized quite a bit. We talked about this 2 years ago in a couple of meetings I was invited to. Operation Boycott, where basically we look at all these woke corporations and said, we're just going to stop buying your stuff, period. And it only works if you get a critical mass. But you're also seeing some of that happening in real time. We've seen several states kick Vanguard and BlackRock out of their state retirement pension systems. You're seeing more and more corporate boards firing ESG people. This isn't making news because the news is fully vested in Great Reset type stuff. But people are waking up to realize this is insanity. At a high, people at the high level are starting to see this. It's showing up in their bottom lines. So if we the people could organize a movement where we say, okay, we're all going to stop, the consumerism, as someone put in chat earlier, which is a real thing. Post World War II, consumerism was shoved down our throats, and it was done intentionally. This is the multinational corporations. They all conspired to do it. They controlled the media, television, radio, advertisement. They turned us into consumers. So how do you defang that machine? Yeah, you stop buying their stuff. Can we survive it? I don't know. It's going to be tough. I don't think enough people are prepared. Yeah, if you want to know where I did most of my Christmas shopping this year, it was prepping stores. I got people water purification kits and prepping books. I could be prepared for something nasty to come down the road because it could happen.
Yeah.
And heck, if I could build my house from scratch starting next year, I'm going to have a water filtration system that keeps the fluoride out of the water. All that stuff. They've been at this for a long time. And, this talks about, did they have this technology and knowledge back in the 40s when everything's really started to shift? They may have. I don't know. They were smart people back then. Would they have kept it from the people? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. To wrap things up, I would like to bring up something very controversial, but I think it's important. Is that that's weird? I heard a car alarm going off. Anyway, and this I guess kind of like a public service announcement, because you brought up prepping and it made me think about this. There's a lot of people, and I'm not going to name names, in the world of truthers, let's say, because we don't like the term conspiracy theories and all conspiracy theorists and all that stuff, that say that they have a plethora of knowledge on certain things and all this kind of stuff, but they also push buy gold, and all that kind of stuff. make sure you verify what those people are saying before you take what they're saying as actual information, just because that could be dangerous. The thing that I appreciate about Brady is that he uses sources. He actually verifies it, and if he can't verify it, he will bring that up. Like earlier, he said I would not bring it up if I did not, have documentation on it. And that's the one thing that I appreciate about Brady and about Doug. So, just as a way of preparing for these times, get water, get food, but make sure that you know what you're getting into before you, let's say, buy a bunch of gold from some guy that says that he worked with Trump and he knows all the inside information. So that's kind of my PSA. I just felt led to say that just now. So
Yeah, I'll follow up on that. The big one we see in a lot of people in our corner of the internet is Birch Gold, and there's a couple others. And I've got no negative information on Birch Gold. I haven't done my full due diligence. But if they approached me, if I start building my channel again, and they approach me as to be a sponsor, I would do the due diligence, and I've got the capabilities of looking through their balance sheets and understanding whether they really have proper gold storage, or if they're rehypothecating the gold certificates, what have you. We have a lot of influencers out there that are pushing this stuff because it makes them money, and they don't have what they're essentially. You have someone who's in a position of authority that people listen to for advice because they know stuff about a lot of stuff. That's why they're an influencer.
at least
And
they give the appearance.
yeah, well, we're talking about people. There's grifters, and then there's people that legitimately are given the best information they can. There's a whole swath of these people that are pushing some of these different precious metals schemes. The biggest grifters in the world. I could name a couple names. Fortunately, I'm not friends with them, and none of my friends are friends with them. But there are huge grifters that have their own little multi-level marketing scams with precious metals and stuff.
Mm.
But these guys don't have the ability to do the due diligence in the first place to know whether they're pushing a scam. And at the end of the day, you are giving financial advice that you're not qualified to give.
Yeah.
I am qualified to give financial advice, and you'll notice I never do that on the air because it's irresponsible. I mean, I don't know. The first thing about anybody in our audience is personal finances and what their goals and needs are. So how could I push a product? Investing is about a process, not a product. And it's understanding your needs, your goals, and customizing, basically say, I've got the whole universe of investment options available to me. I'll solve them on your personal needs, but we have to establish what your needs and goals and resources are first. So it's why people in responsible financial advisory roles don't advertise. You just can't. Because when you go product specific as opposed to process specific, you're pushing. You become a salesman and not an advisor. And
Yeah.
it's a huge red line to cross. So
Yeah,
I'm glad you brought it up.
yeah. Now you said that you could name names. Now I'm kind of curious on who.
Oh God. There's a guy running around out there right now called SG Anon. He popped up out of nowhere.
I have no idea who that is.
Yeah, he's been making the rounds on a lot of big shows, and he's got a lot of followers, whether he's paid for them or not. But
Whose shows has he been on?
Oh goodness, he's been on Scott McKay and a few others.
Okay.
Nino's had him on. A few
And what's
others.
his name?
SG Anon. Yeah, Jordan Sather's been exposing the heck out of that guy. Who's the other one? Oh goodness. He's been at it longer, but they're part of the same multi-level marketing scheme. And they're doing well because occasionally they show videos of this new house in Florida they bought. So these people I call grifters, with their inside info, super secret military intelligence, which they don't have. Cracks me up.
We should do a show on that, just knocking out the grifters left and right. That'd be fun.
Nah, Jordan Sather does it. Jordan Sather does the what does he call it? He does it about every 2 weeks. It's something like Grifter of the Week.
Is it entertaining?
Yeah, it is. It's really good.
Should I watch it?
Yeah, I'll send you a link to it. Okay. Jordan Sather does some pretty good work. Yeah, he's a letter 17 guy, but he can't stand the people that are making a living by making up information. He thinks that there's something to the drops, and that's what Jordan thinks, and he goes, but people pretending they know what they're about instead of actually digging down and doing real research, and because these people are the problem, and it's true, So Jordan Sather's theory is that right around March of 2020, right when COVID lockdowns were happening, there's a group of about 10 to 20 of these new influencers popped up out of nowhere, and they all got huge followings, and they all go on each other's shows, and they have the same advertisers, and they all, it's funny. You'll see them on each other's shows, and what is this guy, Ishmael Perez or Ishmael Valdez? I think it's Ishmael Perez. Is one of the worst of them, but he goes on there and he starts talking about that he's actually the Earth contact for the Galactic Federation, which is the galactic white hats that are going to save the day for us. Now, you and I both don't believe in aliens. He does, or you definitely don't. And I'm sketchy on him. But if a guy comes on your show and he says, yes, and this is what the Galactic Federation told me to share with the audience today, and you're an influencer who's having him on the show, and you sit there and nod your head like a trained SEAL, you're part of the problem. You need to take a guy like that and say, shut the hell up, quit making stuff up. We're actually in a real fight for survival, trying to deal with real world problems. Don't give us a bunch of nonsense and tell us you're from the Galactic Federation.
I mean, now, which trained SEAL were you talking about? You're talking about a Navy SEAL or the sea creature?
The sea creature. Yeah, I mean, if you watch these people and they'll just nod because and they've got this thing going on nowadays. This group of people, and some of these guys, they're good. Some of these are good guys for the most part until they start making stuff up. Yeah. They won't call each other out and say, "Look, show me your source," because that sounds a little. That's look. If you and I have a conversation, and if I disagree with you, I'm going to tell you and say, "Look, where do you get that from?" Well, that's the way. That's the way you should be presenting evidence. These guys aren't doing that because it's all about the grift. You don't, and they're circling the wagon saying, "Oh, anybody who's casting doubt in that's a hater." Well, no, and we know for a fact. You look at the Twitter files, and you see how much shenanigans the FBI and the Department and the Pentagon has been at, trying to influence what people think and can say. And they sent operatives into our movement, the freedom movement, I would call it, to spread disinformation. And the worst interpretation of the quote unquote letter 17 movement is that it was a psyop to make people sit on their butts and stay on a keyboard. Now, Tracy,
technically, it's not wrong.
Tracy, Jordan Sather doesn't hate everyone. He's pretty fair in his criticisms, I would say. He gives people a chance, and he actually wants roots for people. I think he's actually a pretty fair guy. There's just a lot of people that he has caught them saying stuff that isn't true.
I mean, as far as the letter 17, I mean, where I stand on that.
I don't know where you stand, but I don't know if I've told everyone exactly where I stand, but I don't know the truth about the letter 17. I just know that there was somebody putting out some really good information that got a lot of people to wake up, and that was useful. And some of that information, so whoever that was, is a very well-informed person, because, I've known how the world works for quite some time. I've been in this, for 20 years, and I learned some stuff from some of the drops that I didn't know before. So whoever it was very well-informed. Now,
yeah, but I don't know that they were a special CIA operation group.
No, that's my point. That's my point. I have no idea what the truth is about the letter 17. I have no information that leads me to know whether that was exactly how it was portrayed, whether it was a psyop, whether it's something we don't know, whether it changed over time. I don't have the information.
Yeah, because here I'll put it to you this way. And again, I don't know what this guy knows, but the story, the anecdote, I guess would be the way to put it, still is the same. So there's a gentleman that's well known in the UFO community. His name is Richard Doherty, or Doty.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Yeah, and he messed with this older guy, Benowitz, and in order to get him off the trail, of stuff that was going on at the base where he was near, they gave him some false information and passed it as true, right? And Jody ended up saying that all that stuff, well, the what we told him was true, but we made basically, making what seems true to be false and what's false to be true. But there's like a little bit of truth, I guess, in everything that was said. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the Q drops had some good information that was true, but it doesn't mean that everything is true. I mean, I don't know. I'm just very skeptical, just because
Well,
there's
yeah,
no
but
real way.
and that's the beautiful of the beauty of it, because
Did my
there's very,
example make sense? Did
no, it
that?
did. It did make perfect sense, and it's because one of the things you see in the drops all the time is sometimes disinformation is necessary. Well, that opens up the entire everything you say could or could not be a disinformation. So how do you trust it? So, and the answer is you do your own homework, and you find out what you can personally verify, and
Yeah.
you trust what you can know and see. That's the
And
government
that's the
lies.
problem.
There are games within games within games being played right now. There are multiple powers. There's 6,000 influential families, if you're going to believe, the Rothkopf, who I think is correct because he's a insider.
Is he the one that believes that like the top family is an alien or something?
No. Rothkopf was worked directly for Henry Kissinger and was an insider in the CFR, and for 30 years he's been involved in a lot of this stuff. He wrote a couple books and was a lot more candid. I cannot stand the man's politics, but in his books he's a truth teller. He's worth reading. He says there's about 6,000 oligarchical elite families and multinational corporations that are all the players in the Game of Thrones, and they've got they're all of their goals are the same. They all want power, and they play this game of information. They've been doing this for thousands of years, and there's been some families have faded and some new ones arise. The Rockefellers, Rockefellers came to power in the 1800s when John Rockefeller. I may have the founder of the Rockefeller dynasty.
John D. Rockefeller, I believe.
Yeah, John. Thank you. Yeah, and John David was his son, and there's David. Yeah, I get them all mixed up. They keep sharing the same names.
And I think John D. Rockefeller's dad was like
he was selling snake oil.
Yeah, he was a swindler. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a snake oil salesman who's like had warrants out for him in like 7 different states.
Didn't he like sell other people's horses or something at one point? Like,
well, he was really selling. The snake oil was basically opium. That's what made people feel better, and they'd love you, and then they get hooked on stuff. Well, it's funny if you look at how much narcotics is involved in how many of these family fortunes. So the Rockefellers came from opium dealers. Skull and Bones, the co-founder of Skull and Bones, was an opium smuggler. The British East India Company made more money during the opium wars. These are families in the British East India Company that are really high. They sit at the table, at the head table at the globalist, Bilderberger meetings. Yeah, it's all narcotics has been a huge part of this. And there's a reason narcotics are illegal in America, because if you legalized it, these people couldn't make money. They wouldn't need their offshore banks.
Couldn't they make money off the taxes? Like,
You legalize something becomes a legitimate business, and illegitimate business does not like that. The reason cartels exist is for 2 purposes: to maximize profit, but more importantly, to eliminate competition. And all cartels use the government to eliminate the competition. That's what crony capitalism is. We've never been we haven't been a capitalist system at least since the 1850s. A pure capitalism. That's what Lincoln represented, was crony capitalists that wanted to use the government to destroy their competition for their own financial benefit.
Yeah, like the Confederate States of America.
Yeah, state capitalism is anytime the government and business get involved, you have corruption, and that's what they do. That's when we start talking about going back to being a federal republic. You have to get the money out of politics. It's that simple, and that really is the solution. That's taking all these discussions down to one little square. business and the government has no business in business. The government exists to preserve your rights and to protect you from foreign affairs. That's what the founding fathers said. That's what was our original intent, and we screwed it up. Thank you, Alexander Hamilton. But that stuff never would have been. All the stuff we talk about would have been impossible had we followed the recipe.
Yeah.
So how do we get back to it? Same thing we talk about every week: states' rights, nullification, localization, decentralization.
Making God first.
Should have said that one first. Because our government.
It's all right. Doug got me on that one a while back on accident. He caught me off guard. I was like, oh well, of course, but it is.
Well, you acted like you wanted to cut us off. So we've been at it for an hour and 25. I can go longer.
Well, how about we go till 1:30? That kind of helps with my OCD mind a little bit.
Well, that's 3 hours for me. So that
or 1 hour 30 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, let's get some questions from the chat in here, guys. We've thrown a lot of topics out there. It's kind of been pretty random what we're talking about.
Also, if you want to talk about grifters, I'm okay with that chat.
That's not my job.
It's just fun beating up the grifters.
Yeah, the biggest grifters are the politicians, but I guess my whole point on that is, look, obviously, the intelligence agencies that are at war against we the people have infiltrated and sent people.
Merry Christmas, Chris. Go ahead.
Merry Christmas, Chris. Agreed. You've been a good participant and contributor, and as is everyone. We appreciate the audience quite a bit. That if it was just me and Andrew talking, we wouldn't have anywhere near as much fun. So
I think we'd have a lot of fun, but it would just not be as.
It's better with the audience.
Yeah, it is always better with the audience.
Yeah, let's shoot for another. We'll try to get another 15 minutes out of this and see where it goes. God, do I have anything else fun that I read about this week? I already talked about Carrie Lakes. That's right. I spent a lot of time listening to that stuff.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I've been doing a lot of research on biblical history, just because it's important. It's good to know where you come from. It's good to know the history, and it is verifiable history for all the people that think it's not. It's not just a book of stories. There are actual accounts, actual records of those events happening.
So let me see if I can pull anything fun up off the internet. See if there's anything breaking here. I've been having a lot of fun on Twitter. I will be. I don't know how long I'll stay on Twitter, but since Elon Musk bought it, I've been on there getting pretty active. And
I saw how active you've been.
I'm just trying to spread my. The main message I'm spreading there is, people say something totally partisan. I go, it's partisanship that's keeping our country from fixing itself. You people that are arguing right versus left, Republican versus Democrat, you're the problem. You're the distraction. The problem is that people, they want us to divide it right versus left so we don't look up. And, so I've been trying to spread that message, and I'm getting some pretty good, I'm picking up a lot of followers, for what it's worth, get my little endorphin hit.
Sin F said, how do you suggest removing money from politics such as an election?
Oh, Stephanie's going to love my answer. Sin F, I've got a proposed amendment, which is pretty simple and makes a lot of sense. We're supposed to have representative government, not democracy. The national political parties, are what the founding fathers would call factions, are the problem. Republican versus Democrat's a joke. That's not what we're supposed to be talking about. We should be talking about is how do we limit the federal government. So how do you stop it? Well, you got to defund them. So my amendment proposal is basically it's got 3 points. Number one, no campaign contributions can cross state lines, meaning California, Hollywood, and Silicon Valley money can't go into Georgia to prop up, Herschel Walker's opponent, Reverend Warnock, which happened again. That's ridiculous. That's not representative government. That's big money purchasing elections and advertising. That has nothing to do with either democracy in any shape or form. Actually, that is what democracy is. Democracy is the ability to manipulate the masses to vote the way you want them to. That's why we keep pushing democracy, because the people in control think that they can control, sway the masses through their control of the mass media and the money. Now, representative government means people vote for their local representatives, for someone who's going to represent them the best. Well, you got to get outside money out of there. So plank number one, which is actually number two. I got it backwards.
Yeah, but also the big problem on that, though, is because they're both senators. They're supposed to be appointed anyway, not even voted for.
Well, that gets solved. But let me finish the amendment.
All right, go ahead.
Until we go to the next. Now you're jumping into the Convention of States. The other one is, in Citizens United, the Supreme Court sort of ruled that corporations are people. And I would dispute that. And it's self-evident, because if corporations were people, they'd get to vote. And since they cannot, they're obviously not people. So what you do is in this amendment, the only people who can make campaign contributions, period, are registered voters. That's it. If you are not a registered voter, you can't contribute to the political process. You have no say in this. You're a minor, you have no say. You're a foreigner, you have no say. You're a corporation, you're not a person, you don't get a vote. It's self-evident that this should be the case. That's a very easy addition to the amendment. And the third plank of that is very simple, as contribution limits, campaign contribution limits, and definitions of soft dollars. And we've got pretty good laws with that already. So, we could work from that. Stephanie Rechtenwall, who's in our chat, has heard me propose this before, and has apparently talked to that about a couple of people in her state. And hopefully, maybe, we'll get a chance to talk more next year and maybe move that forward. But that's how I would get money out of government. And it's a very simple amendment. And the beautiful thing about it is, if you go into real left-leaning websites, they hate the money in politics. They've been talking about that for years. And people on the right certainly feel the same. This should be a very popular amendment. So how do you get it proposed? Well, we'll work on it. But that's something that could fix it. Then she asks, what about when in office, they leave richer? Well, there's 83,000 IRS agents about to be hired. Well, if I were king for just one day, I would hire all 83,000 and have them audit every single politician. Bribery is already illegal. Corruption is already illegal. You don't need any laws. It needs to be enforced. Yeah, that one, people go, how do you stop politicians from, it's already illegal to take a bribe. It's already illegal to bribe a politician, so just enforce it. What else do we have in the chat? Was that a good answer? You like that one? It's one of my favorite topics, how to get the money out of politics. The libertarians would even support that one. I went and the Libertarian Party on Twitter. Supposedly the Libertarians. I used to be a member of the local Libertarian Party, and I was a delegate for the convention and stuff like that. And I held office. And when I started to see how it actually functioned, I recognized it was just as bad as the Republicans and the Democrats. So the LP to me is not a solution. And when you see how they sway elections, they're a bit of the problem. But it's the parties themselves that are the problem. Yeah, if we defund them all from a national level. Oh, by the way, if you pass that amendment, the DNC and the GOP or the RNC lose all of their power, because it's their ability to control the purse strings. It's why they, the corporations that control, the Ronna McDaniels of the world. That's how they wield their power. So if you pass that amendment, it goes back. We get local very fast. But I think the world would be better if you had some Green Party people and Libertarian Party people that had a chance for, to win some House races or local offices. We want more diversity of thought and less bipartisanism. Yeah, because we live with a uniparty. They say, look, they just passed a $1.7 trillion spending bill, which the Republicans, many of them crossed the lines on that. It's ridiculous. But if
Yeah.
and now we can segue into what you were saying about the senators being appointed, because that's 17th Amendment, and which we're actually working on the 17th Amendment challenge, and we're actively working on the Reynolds v. Sims challenge. I was at Doug's Constitution Association annual Christmas dinner a week or two ago, talking with George Rombach and a couple of other people about my Reynolds v. Sims plan, and they want to run with it. We're gonna challenge Reynolds v. Sims from California, and I think we have standing, but that's not my area of expertise.
Yeah. Here's a question, and we'll hang it up right after this question. Was Greg there?
Nope, he did not make that one.
I'm still waiting for Doug to have him call me.
All right, well, I'll get on that because I haven't talked to Greg in a while, and I miss the guy. He's a very good dude.
I've got a lot of questions for that man. Even if we wanted to do like a 3-way call or FaceTime or something, or however, or we could just record one of these and just not share it.
Yeah, well, there's some conversations that should probably be done with no electronic devices in the immediate vicinity.
Well, that's impossible for me to be a part of those.
No, that's true. Well, that's actually not true. There may be a couple of apps out there that are functional. Tracy's asking, did I get Doug's salsa recipe? No, I got my own salsa recipe. I don't argue with Doug about salsa. He's got a good salsa. I've got a good salsa. It's all good.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. I'm yawning too much, and that's very unprofessional. I've had a long day. I've been up since 5. So,
well, fun show. Thanks everybody for being here.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Hope we entertained you. Yeah, Merry Christmas. I have no idea whether I'll be able to make it next Friday or not, but plan on it, and we'll see what happens. I'm not in control of my own social calendar, especially in the holiday season.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's go ahead and just close it out. Do you want to close it out?
Sure.
Do it, but
yeah. Well, we'll use Doug's favorite takeaway: "United we stand." No, it's divided. United we stand. How's it work? Something we kick butt. God bless America. Merry Christmas, everyone.
I'm leaving that. All right. Good night, everybody.
It was a good effort. Cheers.